This is not my first visit to the National Weather Service in Goodland, and we've tried to visit others. We've been in Dodge City and Topeka, and I've yet to visit the one in Wichita, which I will do. But you've gotten my attention here in Goodland, and you have made some news across the country and certainly in the state about the need for workers, about the need for meteorologists and people who can help predict the weather and forecast from day to day. And so we took the challenge seriously that there was a National Weather Service in our state that wasn't able to provide 24/7 forecasting. And that seems pretty dangerous to me, particularly this time of the year. I don't know when it's not dangerous, but certainly now. And at least as somebody who grew up in northwest Kansas, all our weather originates someplace this way to the west of us, and you're at the forefront of seeing those developments. And so I scheduled this to have a conversation with you, see how I could be of help, see how things were going, to commend you and thank you for working here and for caring for people across our state and across the country. And in the meantime, we've been lobbying the administration, the Office of Personnel Management, the National Weather Service. And the good news is that yesterday we were informed that the hiring freeze has been lifted so that you can fill this position. And we were notified that by Director Graham. And he volunteered to come with me to Goodland. I said, I'm only going to be there 30 minutes, and do you know how easy it is to get here? So I didn't really encourage it, although I would have been happy to have had him in Kansas. And we might do that when we visit maybe all 4 stations in Kansas. But the good news, and I didn't know whether you would know, but the good news that we were informed of yesterday, hiring freeze lifted. And my impression and understanding is that it will take a couple of months for that position to be filled. And in the meantime, there's a commitment to have people in here to make sure that we have 24/7 work. I know what the right words are. People working here 24/7 to fill that gap until that person is hired. So the intermediate or longer term, I don't like that phrase. So what I think is a couple of month period of time, we're going to fill the gap. The National Weather Service is going to have people transferred here for a period of time. And then in a couple of months, they should have someone hired and at Goodland and working. And so, again, I just think every once in a while we're able to do something that I think is helpful, not only to Goodland and to, this is an important, we would not want anybody in the National Weather Service or otherwise to think that Goodland's National Weather Service was unimportant. And if we don't advocate to fill a position, it may appear that it doesn't matter, or people don't care, or the mission is not necessary. And everything I know about living out here and living in Kansas my whole life, what happens here is hugely important. So that's a piece of good news, and different than when I committed to coming to Goodland, different than what I thought I was going to have to say. But that happened yesterday afternoon.
That's really good to hear, because we are definitely struggling on the staffing side. I believe we have 18 volunteers coming to help us out?
19 now, I just got another one. 19.
From other
offices.
All over.
Yeah, all over the country. They're coming at various times the rest of the summer. I think starting next week is the first person's coming. We should be able to have, I don't know when they're all time-wise are coming, so we won't be 24/7 all the time, but there will be times where we can get back to 24/7.
What I was told is that you could be or would be 24/7 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, for that pay period.
Oh, yeah, that pay period.
That's a time that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry, I keep thinking about pay periods, not weeks. But you're right, because after this next one, we have 3 people coming for that one.
And then a good chunk of July and August open 24/7, because you got plenty of volunteers during that time frame.
So if you know somebody that you want to apply for a job at the National Weather Service, please encourage them to apply.
I've been trying to recruit former people here, like you come back. Like Scott, I was trying to get Scott to take over the MS. Back. You still can have
what kind of training do I need?
Social media.
It's been a bore these last 2 years. I'm not sure what. a lot of fun, but it's a blur.
Well, and you know, the tornado that hit Grinnell, it was like highlighting the importance of this. And, you know, Greensburg almost got hit again. And it's just this reminder that
Yeah.
this is the season. And I spoke at Grinnell on Memorial Day. And I was glad they invited me because they spent from the tornado till Memorial Day cleaning up the cemetery so they could have a presentable service. And they did. I mean, I think it was 80 headstones were turned. Their flagpoles, I saw photos, had been bent in the wind. And then Plevna with an F5, 200. I was at the National Guard headquarters in Topeka on Tuesday, and I can remember days in which when I showed up someplace, people say, was there a disaster? It just like became my life, was one tornado after another. Excuse me.
Sorry. Disabled are funny about it. Yeah, I think you guys came up with the presentation. You guys want to go through it?
Yeah.
I don't want to steal your thunder. You came up with it. I'm on the night shift, so I'm kind of.
I'm sorry to bring you out during the day.
That's fine. I need to get up. Kids will wake me up one way or the other. So.
Oh, behind me. All right.
All right, we haven't had guests in a long time. So.
You'll get comfortable sometime.
So we are one of 122 offices nationwide. Our area, we service 19 counties across Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado, with majority of those counties, 13 of them, here in northwest Kansas. As we kind of discussed, we do have currently 13 people employed for us. We have 2 lead forecasters, 3 general forecasters, all 3 meteorology managers. The electronic staff, we have 3 members as well, including the electronic systems analyst Grady, 1 information technology officer, and then our administrative support assistant. So our primary focus is forecasting. We do do our best to forecast days 0 through 7 is our primary mission. We are collaborating with all of our surrounding offices to provide as much of a succinct and uniform forecast as we can with each other, so no one is confused by those crazy borders and all the time zones that we have.
That's what I was going to say, but the first time I campaigned in Goodland, I was told by one of my friends, do not raise time zones here. But it would be so much simpler
Oh, yes.
that all the other people change to whatever you have. That's the answer.
It's definitely been some challenges. I grew up in Central Time, so luckily I can still work in both time zones as
Yeah.
well. But, takes some adjusting. Aviation spot forecasts are part of our forecasting core that we definitely focus on. Want to make sure all of our fire partners are aware of any hotspots we can see on satellite and get that forecast information out to them as quickly as possible. And then our aviation, so Goodland and then the Cook Airport up in Nebraska are our primary aviation sites that we do 6-hour forecasts for, or every 6-hour forecast updates for. Also, we have impact decision support services. This is something we are actively growing in our county warning area. We have had many staff members undergoing the training to become deployment ready. We actually have 2 actively doing that right now. And then we've had opportunities to go help out with our neighboring offices, like Cheyenne and North Platte, to get some experience on site in a large EOC for a large state event. We're also very active on our social media. We do get quite a bit of engagement on our Facebook pages within our community, so we're able to get both reports and get messages out to them. As much
People are telling you what they're seeing, what they're observing.
Yes. Yes, they love to tell us what we see. It's really helpful. We appreciate them quite a bit. And then watches and warnings and advisories are, of course, one of our top priorities that we have. Trying to get as much lead time as we can for people so they're able to protect themselves and their properties. Any additions you want to add on that?
No, you did a really good job.
Okay.
I would say the impact, we call it IDSS, is really helping people. When I got into the agency, Scott could probably vouch, it was very much, our forecast was just the number we put out for the day. The forecast was the forecast and that was the end of it. We've learned that there's so much predictability issues and things like that, we really need to explain and put things in context for people, and then people respond so much better to that. like Facebook, you almost always will get a question of what the forecast is, but then when you start talking to the person more, you realize that there's actually really something specific they're worried about, and they have thresholds they're worried about, and it's gotten so much more than just, you know, what we used to send out for the radio or whatever to put on the radio. So I think it's very fulfilling. It's really exciting stuff to do. Hard, but
Right.
definitely fulfilling.
And then we just kind of want to highlight two of our larger events this year. So we had the March 14th dust storm event, which was pretty tragic for us in Northwest Kansas. We actually began highlighting the potential for dust, including a wall of dust mention, several days out. Oh, it didn't update.
Oh, well, it was just small details.
Okay, it may not have my things updated then. And so we mentioned those in our products, such as the forecast discussion and our hazardous weather outlook, which the hazardous weather outlook also plays over our NOAA weather radios here. We were focusing in on our area of concerns with the graphic the night before, which panned out really well for us. And then we issued dust storm warnings along I-70 as that wall of dust began to move eastward, and that dust lasted through the early evening hours for us. That also kind of made it difficult for our first responders. We've had several tell us that they couldn't see someone at arm's length from them at times in the dust, and then when they were working through the night, we had the high winds kind of continue on and the cold rain, and that kind of inhibited efforts for some of their response. Also, cloud cover, we did have that as a bit of a challenge for us when it came to forecasting for this event, when it came to the watches and warnings. Satellite, we're able to get a little extra lead time with our sparse data network that we have on terms of visibility, but we are able to make it work and get as much messaging out as we could to the public. Unfortunately, we had the 8 fatalities on I-70 with the 71 vehicles. They were all parked next door at the police station, so we were able to see all of those as they were hauled in the next days, or next several days. And we actually had 5 of our 8 meteorologists working this event. I think most of us were all actually here.
I wasn't actually.
Except for
That's right.
you came in later.
One of the reasons we planned to come to Goodland and Colby this week, and it didn't work out. I'm told everybody in town is leaving for a track meet or something today. Yeah, and but we paid tribute to the emergency responders on the Senate floor. We had those remarks framed, and we're going to present them to each one of the agencies that were involved. And we couldn't draw a crowd because of track meet. We'll be back.
I believe it was Brian James, our local fire chief, he had a very touching thing he wrote about dealing with this. That was.
I read it.
I can't imagine that. I mean, we have our small part of it, but they had to go through to get that was.
To be unable to see, you know, yeah.
Unfortunately, dust storms are it is our #1 killer out here. Everyone thinks it's tornadoes, and they are important, don't get me wrong. But we've had more deaths with dust storms, and I don't think we've had a tornado death since the 50s. Hopefully it stays that way, but it's something it's been very hard to, it's a hard thing to get people aware of, because like, you know, most people on I-70 aren't from around here. They might not know what a dust storm even is, and trying to get them to take the right actions, which we to this day get people arguing with us on social media about when we say the safe thing to do is pull off the road and turn off your lights. And everyone's like, no, you have to have your lights on so they can see you. And we're trying to explain, no, you don't want them.
They think you're following them,
Yeah,
right?
they
That's
think
the
you're
deal.
the road, and they're gonna fall right into you. But we have made some progress on this. We went from being solely just reactive to dust storms to now we're getting pretty good at predicting them. This one, we saw coming, the cloud cover kind of made it so we couldn't see that the wall had formed it already, which is unfortunate, but we made some strides. I know Dave, before he retired, was working with headquarters on dust messaging to try to get something more unified going out. We actually had an event just like this, like 2 weeks ago, right? It was Wednesday before the tornado outbreak.
Yep.
And thankfully, you know, it was a big wall of dust that went down I-70, and thankfully there was no accidents. They heard them. They got the roads closed really quick. And so it can, we've made a lot of improvements on that, and hopefully this doesn't ever happen again. But that was.
I think we made improvements, communicate with our partners too, and that's made a big difference as well.
But yeah, that's actually been the thing. It's not even the meteorology of it that's the best. It's how you communicate with people. We originally thought maybe the best thing to do is get like a warning out way ahead of time. And then we kind of learned, well, if we do that, nobody takes it seriously. If you tell someone a dust storm's coming, they look outside and it's clear, they're just gonna go. So we had to come up with this thing, like, well, it needs to be issued so they can kind of see it on the horizon, but not hit it. And, we've done a lot with briefing the emergency managers and the sheriffs ahead of time, going, yeah, it's coming, you guys should probably go ahead and take action now, before we alert the public to say, okay, now it's time to.
Is there a circumstance in which you have the sufficient time to warn people that we close the interstate?
I noticed, like, this last event, as soon as we issued that dust storm warning, the interstate closed.
Okay,
They
so it did
close
happen, did it?
immediately. And unfortunately, this event, the dust storm, we had blowing dust products out, but the dust storm warning that sets off every phones didn't come until right as this was happening. So they wouldn't have had time to close it based on
Well,
that.
and it wouldn't always be the interstate.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, this last event they did, we were watching on the camera in Colby, and sure, like, within a minute of us issuing that warning, they were closing the interstate down and getting people off, which is about all you can do for an event like that. You can't really, until you get into a dust, it's hard to really describe what zero visibility is really like when you get in there. One of our fellow Mets who just recently retired, he was big into dust, he loved dust, and he went out dust chasing one day. I warned him not to do it, it's not fun. He got caught in a dust plume, and he said that's the one time he's ever been scared of weather, because he could not see anything, and he stops, he doesn't know if there's a car right behind him that's gonna hit him, and it was just, until you get in it, people don't understand how deadly it is. And we made strides though. I hope this is the last time we ever have to deal with something like this, but at least to this magnitude.
Are there things that we can do to improve either with Highway Patrol or KDOT to improve that process?
I think it's just we all have to be consistent on the message and the threat. At this event, we weren't sure, like we had a good feeling it was gonna turn into a wall of dust, but prior to this, we just kept getting reports of like individual plumes.
Right.
And that you can't really tell, I wouldn't feel right telling someone to close the interstate down for just one little section swollen. It's when it turns into that big wall that becomes a problem. And unfortunately, it seemed like it happened right over top of us is when it actually formed. And
Was this about Brewster? About it, Brewster? Edson?
Yeah, because like it came through here, and I mean I was out dust chasing a little bit. I was looking at it because I like dust too, and when it was coming up to Goodland, it didn't seem like it was an organized wall or anything like that. It just seemed like it was kind of dusty, and so unfortunately, it's kind of like tornadoes. Sometimes it forms right on top of something, and they're going to be a place that gets the shortest amount of lead time. But we made strides, and Ken probably saved you. Because they told me you were asking questions about it. I wrote this long thing about dust storms, and looking back, that's probably more information than you would have wanted, but don't ever ask a former Sioux about meteorology stuff.
And why do you assume an elected official wouldn't want all the information possible?
I got pretty far to the weeds.
You know Adam Smith, this is your state representative. So when he's asking about KDOT and Highway Patrol, he has something he could do about it.
No, I think we have a really good relationship with KDOT. Really, really good relationship. And it's just a matter of, we gotta make sure that on our end that we let them know how serious it is. Because we can fall into a trap sometimes, we issue the products, everything's good, right? But you could issue a perfect tornado warning, but if nobody takes any action on it, it's really not worth anything. So that's where we really focus now, is making sure, okay, we get something out and then everybody knows what they have to do with it. And I don't envy KDOT, that's a big decision to close the interstate. We always get calls about when is it going to open and stuff. I can't imagine the pressure they're getting because they're the ones doing it. But I'm actually really proud of our partnership with KDOT and stuff. And as long as we keep our lines of communication open and we know that we're truly giving them the information they need, I think we'll be okay. This was just a tragedy. Things came together the wrong way. And
Adam, you may know this, you may be too young, but Stan Clark, the state senator from this area, was killed in a dust storm on I-70. He was from Oakley, coming home from Topeka after a session, and got caught in a dust storm in a truck. And
wasn't it during that same period of time when we had people from Goodland, Merlin Stacer was killed, remember that?
was in Burlington.
okay,
Yeah, and it was on I-70 and he was headed to Burlington, and I think it was kind of right in that same time frame, if I remember right.
Okay.
Yeah, bad deal.
2004,
Probably.
That's
something
about
like
right,
that,
yeah.
Mhm.
it was my brief time I wasn't here.
Also, we had 3 were killed in a dust storm near Selden. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like you said, people think tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, blizzards, but really, in terms of fatalities, dust storms have been the most impact.
I actually have a request from a highway patrol officer to do training with highway patrol, and I believe, KDOT this summer about dust storms, help them understand the dangers and probably work on that relationship as far as communication and how they anticipate these in the future.
Are they as predictable as a tornado? Or is maybe I should say unpredictable as a tornado?
We have a pretty good, I'm pretty confident we know the patterns pretty well that cause, especially these walls of dust. The individual plumes are always gonna be kind of hard to tell ahead of time, because those really are just a field blowing. What you're saying?
Well, that's actually why I think a tornado is actually a semi-decent analogy. We know the setups that can lead to it, but sometimes you do have to kind of wait for it to start to form before things happen, so that's just my opinion.
And I will say, we've came a long way, like even when you were Scott, about, we really got things down about what to look for, and to the point where we used to always be kind of scared of dust, although there could be dust today. Now we're usually pretty good knowing it's coming.
Noticed that.
You know, it's just a matter of fine tuning the specifics. of
If
it.
you just forecast more rain.
I know. Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the first things we thought was like, oh, well, once we get some moisture, the dust threat stops.
It doesn't.
Not really. We had a dust storm that formed literally 3 days after it started in Yuma County, Colorado. 3 days prior to that, they had 10 inches of snow. It melted, but it was so warm and dry the next 2 days that all it just baked the soil, and it was blowing again. So those nice, hot, windy, dry days we get, doesn't matter how much rain you had, it's going to cook the top layer of the soil again. Especially when you get these wall type days, it just, because it's not like one plume, it's just collecting dust as it moves. So it just gets more concentrated and more concentrated.
Does the Weather Service have a role to play in grassland fires?
We do provide.
I mean, maybe it's the information about what the circumstances of the atmosphere or something is. I don't know.
We do provide weather warnings for when the weather conditions are really favorable for fire spread. We call those red flag warnings. We do issue forecasts. We do have a satellite.
So when we hear on the radio that it's high wind, high risk for fires, that comes from National Weather Service?
Yeah, or if you hear the phrase red flag warning, that's definitely one of ours. We also use the GOES satellite. We can detect wildfires on that. That's been very helpful, assuming there's no clouds. We can see a fire once it gets to about 10 acres large. And there's been several times that we've contacted emergency managers or emergency services, and we were the first person to tell them there was a fire started out there. So they can get out there before it gets out of hand. That's been very, very helpful. And actually, fire and dust they're really interrelated, and that's probably where I can get into it. Dust events and fire events really kind of overlap a lot, and we've been talking about trying to get something added to our fire weather warnings for days when we're worried about dust. Because we've had several big dust events that happened with wildfires embedded in them. I think Weskin almost got burned down years ago. Came right up to the side of town, and they were also in the middle of a dust storm. And I have a lot of in-laws around Weskin and Cheyenne Wells, and they were telling me about fighting fire and all that stuff. So it's amazing how those two things are interlinked with each other.
And we've had dust storms start fires with friction.
Oh, yeah, I did not believe them until they showed me proof. My brother-in-laws, they do wells around here, and that Weskin day, they were actually, when the dust first hit, they were out north of Weskin, and they said they were watching the barbed wire, and sure enough, sparks were flying off the barbed wire because of static electricity. And I think Pappy, the EM in Logan County, had mentioned he tracked one fire down to the source was a fence. He was expecting to find power lines, no, it was a barbed wire fence where the fire started just down into that. And there's no way of predicting when that will happen.
Do you have any requests of Adam or I, things we could do to be of help?
We appreciate all your support, and like what you've just done with hiring freeze and stuff, that helps us a lot, because we do our best to make sure nobody notices we pride ourselves and we keep doing everything. And you probably heard from Ken and stuff, we've been down for a while, and it kind of took us all to finally realize we got really bad, we have to stop doing something for a little bit because we're not gonna have enough people to do this. But just the support helps. The fact that we're getting TDYs means the world to me. I'm not an emotional guy, but I got choked up when I saw those people coming, because I was like, we just finished the Grinnell tornado day, we were really tired from all that and working, and it's like, oh, this is gonna be just a long summer, and then I hear we have help coming, which wouldn't have happened without your all's support. That's all I really need is that,
Well-
knowing that support goes a long way just for our morale alone.
Well, thanks for allowing us to come and say that we appreciate you. I'm back to chairing the subcommittee that funds the National Weather Service. So I'm the lead appropriator for NOAA, a bunch of other things. It's called Commerce, Justice, Science. And so all the programs under the Department of Commerce, including NOAA and then NSF, are our primary responsibility. So we're in a position, if there is something, that we can generally get somebody's attention. They don't always do what I ask them to do, but then they don't get any money, and then what does that do? Can't win.
And hopefully our services, like, I hope your constituents and stuff think highly of us.
This topic of 24/7 has been something that people have talked to me about just in Kansas.
Yeah.
Like that kind of took we know the weather occurs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and
Yeah,
I
was a little
particularly
surprised by
disliked that in my home state, this was where weather is a significant factor of our lives. That this was the circumstance. So
I appreciate that, and it did mean a lot to see the reaction to that. We weren't sure anyone was going to notice, because we did a good job making it so you really don't notice. Like Dodge takes over things and it's seamless. And
I didn't hear any complaints about something didn't happen.
yeah,
So it was more the statement that we're not 24/7 than the consequences of not being
Yeah.
24/7.
it's thankfully it hasn't been tested really hard yet. The weather's cooperated. The storms kind of die off on time, and, like as we expected. But no, we appreciate all this.
You're welcome.
Morale has been a tough thing
I bet.
this year, and it goes a long way to see if there's help coming. So.
Adam, you have anything?
I don't, just appreciate everything that everybody does, and it's a tough job. Some days are tougher than others, just like everything else, but thank you for all the time and effort that you've put in.
We need to make certain, I should tell you that I'm working with Senator Peters, who's a Democratic member of the Senate from Michigan, and we are introducing legislation. I was going to look and see what the words are, to exempt meteorologists, hydrologists, and field technicians from hiring freezes. So we're going to try to get out ahead of this. And sometimes, when they determine who's essential, they forget how many people it takes to allow that person to do his or her job. And so we're trying to have it encompassing enough. We've had this, I also chair a committee I'm on the appropriations committee that funds the transportation department, so FAA. And so, we didn't get rid of any controllers. Well, that's not just the only people who matter in providing safe skies. So we're trying to make sure that it's broad enough to allow you to do your work.